The Apache land had always been filled with voices, the sound of horses, drums, and the laughter of families. But for 10 long years, something was missing. There were no men to lead the hunts, no men to sit in the council circle, no men to guide the boys into adulthood. Only the women and children remained. They were strong, yes, but strength alone could not fill the empty space left behind. The women carried heavy loads on their shoulders, doing both their own tasks and those that once belonged to their fathers, brothers, and husbands. The children grew up not knowing the sound of a man's voice in the morning, not knowing the firm hand of a father teaching them to ride or to throw a spear. Around the fire at night, the elders tried to keep the old stories alive. They told tales of warriors who once rode with bravery, who guarded the tribe with honor. The little ones listened with wide eyes, imagining heroes they had never seen. Some even asked, "Is it true? Were there really such men?" The elders nodded, but their hearts ached. As the years passed, the absence became heavier. The women were tired. They could hunt small game, gather roots, and defend themselves with bows, but they knew that their way of life was incomplete. Sometimes at night, the older women whispered to each other, wondering if their tribe was cursed, wondering if they would ever see a man walk proudly in their camp again. The land itself seemed to share their sadness. The wind blew across the desert with a lonely whistle. The rivers that once echoed with shouts of men now ran quietly, carrying only the sound of birds and insects. The horses stood restless, as if waiting for riders who never returned. Despite it all, the Apache women did not give up. They became leaders, warriors, and caretakers all at once. Mothers taught their sons not only how to fetch water and gather firewood, but also how to watch the stars, how to listen to the ground, and how to stay alert to dangers. Daughters grew up brave and wise, learning to fight as well as to nurture. Still in the back of every mind was the same thought: something is missing. The tribe held ceremonies each season, hoping for a sign. They painted their faces, sang the old songs, and prayed to the spirits of their ancestors. They asked for guidance, for protection, and for the return of balance. But the seasons passed with no answer, and the prayers echoed into silence. 10 years is a long time. In 10 years, children become young adults and the young grow older. A whole generation had grown up never knowing what it meant to walk beside a brave man. Some believed that perhaps they no longer needed one, that they could survive as they were. But deep down they all knew that the circle of life was broken. The absence of men was not just about muscle or fighting. It was about wisdom, companionship, and the balance of spirit. The elders reminded the people often, "A tribe is like a bird. One wing is the women, the other wing is the men. A bird cannot fly with only one wing." Sometimes, when the moon was full, the women gathered the children close and told them stories of their fathers and grandfathers. They spoke of bravery, of kindness, of men who respected the land and treated others with honor. The children listened, their eyes glowing in the firelight, but their young hearts wondered if such men were only part of dreams. The tribe's leader was an old woman named Nalin. She was wise and steady, her hair silver like the desert moon. She had guided them through storms, hunger, and raids from outsiders. Her voice carried weight, but she too felt the burden of those empty years. She would often sit by the fire at night, her face turned to the sky, whispering to the stars as though speaking to someone unseen. Nalin carried hope in her heart. She believed that somewhere out there, beyond the mountains and rivers, there was still a man who carried truth, strength, and spirit. She believed that one day he would come, and when he did, the tribe would feel whole again. Yet even her hope was tested by the long years. One cold winter, when food was scarce, the people sat in silence around the fire. The children's faces were thin, and the mothers looked worn. It was then that Nalin spoke firmly. "We have lived without men for 10 years. We have not broken, we have not disappeared. That means we are strong, but do not forget we are waiting. One day someone will come. A man of truth and bravery. We must keep our hearts ready." Her words gave the people comfort, though none could imagine when or how such a person would appear. Life went on, the sun rising and setting, the desert stretching endless around them. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Still, the tribe survived. They worked together. They taught the children to never give up, and they carried the memory of the past in their songs. Yet in every corner of the camp, in every silent glance exchanged among the women, there was the same quiet wish, that one day, the empty years would end. It was into this silence, Into this long waiting that whispers of change finally began. The world beyond their camp was vast, filled with wanderers and travelers, with dangers and surprises. And somewhere out there, far from their knowledge, was a man walking his own lonely road. A man whose path was slowly, steadily moving closer to theirs. The Apache people did not know it yet, but their waiting was coming to an end. 10 years of emptiness had tested them, but the winds of fate were shifting. Soon the tribe would learn that hope, even after so many seasons, can still be rewarded. The desert sun was setting when the first rumor came. A young girl sent out to gather herbs returned breathless. She said she had seen a man walking along the ridge, carrying nothing but a small pack and a staff. At first the women shook their heads. Many travelers had passed through in the past 10 years, traders, soldiers, even wanderers seeking shelter. But none had stayed, and none had felt like the missing piece they longed for. Yet the girl insisted. "He is different," she said. "He walked as though he belonged to the earth. He did not rush, he did not stumble. His eyes looked far, like someone who listens to more than words." The elders listened carefully. They exchanged glances but did not speak. Rumors were dangerous things. Hope could lift hearts, but it could also break them if the truth failed. Still, the thought of someone out there moving closer to their land stirred feelings they had not felt in years. That night, the women gathered around the fire. They spoke quietly while the children slept. Some were afraid. What if this man brought danger? What if he came to take, not to give? Others argued that the tribe could not close its heart forever. 10 years was too long to live without balance. Nalin, the elder who guided them, sat in silence for a long while. Finally, she said, "The earth does not send footsteps without meaning. We will not call him a savior, but we will not turn our backs to signs. If he is true, his spirit will show it. If he's false, the wind will carry him away." The next day, more whispers came. A boy hunting rabbits said he had seen the stranger kneeling by the stream, drinking water with his hands. He carried no weapons except a knife, yet he moved with calmness as if he feared nothing. The boy said he had scars on his arms and across his face, the kind only a man of struggles could carry. The women's hearts grew restless. Could this really be someone meant for them, or just another shadow passing by? They decided to watch him from afar before letting him near the camp. For 3 days, the tribe's younger members followed his tracks. They saw how he walked through the land. He treated the desert not as an enemy but as a friend. He gathered wood without waste, left water for animals at the stream, and slept under the open stars without fear. His way was not greedy nor careless. It was steady, as though he belonged to the rhythm of the land itself. On the 4th day, he drew closer. From the hills, the tribe could see him walking with quiet strength, each step measured. He did not seem lost. He did not seem broken. There was a story in his presence, but no one yet knew what it was. When he reached the edge of their territory, the tribe grew divided. Some women whispered that he was the one they had been waiting for. Others were wary. They had survived alone for 10 years. Could they risk trusting a stranger? That evening, the campfire glowed bright under the dark sky. Nalin rose to speak. Her voice was steady, though her eyes carried the weight of the years. "We have lived without a man for a long time. We have become strong, but our circle is not whole. Now the land has sent us this stranger. We do not know his heart, but we know this. We must not decide with fear. We will test him, not with cruelty, but with truth. If his spirit is false, he will leave. If his spirit is true, the earth will show it to us." The people nodded, though their hearts were filled with questions. Some of the children whispered with excitement, imagining the stranger as a hero from the old stories. Others clung to their mothers, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. That night, the stranger camped by the stream just outside their land. He built a small fire, cooked what little food he had, and sat silently gazing at the stars. From a distance, some of the tribe watched him. They noticed that he bowed his head before eating, as though giving thanks to unseen spirits. He spoke no words of pride, no shouts of power. He sat quietly, and the desert wind seemed to respect him. The next morning, the tribe prepared to meet him. Nalin gathered the strongest among them, not to fight but to stand as guardians. She told the others, "Do not greet him with smiles, do not greet him with anger. Greet him with silence, for silence shows truth. Let him speak. Let him show his heart." As the sun rose, the stranger walked slowly toward the camp. His steps did not falter. He saw the women standing in a line, their faces calm but watchful, their bows near but not raised. He stopped a few paces away and lowered his staff. "I seek no harm," he said in a low, steady voice. "I am only a traveler. If you wish me gone, I will go, but if you allow me, I will share my strength." The words hung in the air, simple, clear, without demand, without arrogance. The tribe said nothing, but Nalin studied him carefully. She saw the scars on his face, the steady fire in his eyes, and the humility in his posture. He did not boast. He did not beg. He simply offered. Finally, Nalin spoke. "A traveler may pass through, but a man must prove his heart. You will not eat from our fire until the land itself speaks for you. Tomorrow you will be tested. Only then will we know if your words carry truth." The stranger bowed his head. "I accept," he said quietly. The tribe returned to their camp, their hearts beating with questions. For the first time in 10 years, the fire of possibility burned within them. They had waited so long, and now the moment of testing had come. The children whispered stories to each other before sleep. The women lay awake, torn between fear and hope. And Nalin, sitting alone beneath the stars, whispered to the spirits, "If this is the man we have waited for, let his truth shine. If not, let him pass like the wind." The desert listened. The stars shone, and the tribe waited for dawn, knowing that tomorrow would decide whether this stranger was just another shadow, or the brave man they had been searching for all these years. The morning of the test arrived with a sky painted in soft gold. The tribe gathered in silence, their eyes fixed on the stranger who now stood before them. He had not run away during the night, nor had he tried to sneak into their camp. He had waited calmly by the stream, as though he trusted the earth to guide his steps. Nalin, the elder, raised her hand, and the tribe's murmur quieted. "You wish to stand among us," she said firmly. "But words are only smoke. A man's truth is seen in what he does, not what he says. You will face trials not of strength alone, but of spirit. If you pass, the land will call you one of us. If you fail, you will leave with no harm but no place among our people." The stranger bowed his head with respect. "I accept." The first trial was given by the hunters. They led him into the mountains where the rocks were sharp and the paths were steep. There they challenged him to bring back food, not just for himself but enough for the children of the tribe. It was not a simple task. The land was hard and the animals were swift. Many who had lived there all their lives struggled to find food in such a place. The stranger moved quietly through the mountains. He studied the wind, the tracks in the dirt, the way the birds circled above. Hours passed, and the hunters who followed him whispered among themselves. He was patient. He did not waste arrows. He waited until the right moment, and with one steady throw, he caught a rabbit. Then another. He gathered enough to feed not just one child, but several. When he returned, he gave the food to the youngest children first, keeping nothing for himself. The women watched closely. His eyes showed no pride, only calmness. He did not boast of his catch. He simply placed the food down as though it was the most natural thing in the world. The second trial was given by the mothers. They asked him to carry water from the river to the camp. At first it seemed like a small task, but the distance was long, the jars heavy and the sun cruel. Many men might grow angry at being given a chore that seemed unworthy of their strength, but the stranger lifted the jars without complaint. He walked steadily, making trip after trip, sweat dripping down his face, but no word of protest leaving his lips. The mothers nodded to each other. Patience was a sign of true spirit. The third trial came from the elders. They wanted to see his heart. They sat him before the fire and asked him to tell his story. Who was he? Where had he come from? Why had he walked alone through the desert? The camp grew silent as he began to speak. His voice was low but steady, each word carrying weight. "I was once part of a people," he said, "but I lost them in a great storm of life. For years I wandered, carrying only my scars and my breath. I learned to listen to the earth, to walk without pride, to give thanks for even the smallest gift. I do not come to you as a savior. I come only as a man who has walked many roads and wishes to stand where truth is valued." His words were simple, but they touched the hearts of those listening. He did not brag of victories or battles. He did not paint himself as a hero. He spoke with honesty, and in that honesty there was strength. The fourth trial came without warning. A sudden storm rolled over the desert, fierce and wild. The wind howled and the rain poured down in heavy sheets. Tents shook and children cried as the camp scrambled to keep their fires alive. In that moment of chaos, the stranger acted without hesitation. He lifted children to safety, tied down tents, and shared his blanket with the coldest among them. He gave his strength freely without waiting to be asked. When the storm passed, the tribe saw him soaked, shivering, but still standing firm, his arms around two small children he had sheltered. Nayland looked into his eyes then, and for the first time she saw no emptiness, no darkness. She saw steadiness, the kind that could not be taught but only carried deep within. But still, the final trial remained. This one was unspoken, one that could not be planned. The tribe waited to see how he would live among them in the days that followed. Would he treat them as equals? Would he grow arrogant after being accepted into their camp? Or would his spirit remain humble? For 3 days they watched him quietly. He helped the women gather wood, carried water without complaint, taught the children how to make small traps, and told them stories of the stars at night. He laughed with the young ones, listened to the elders, and treated each person with respect. He did not seek to lead, yet people began to naturally follow his example. By the end of those days, whispers spread across the camp. Perhaps he is the one. Perhaps the wait is over. Perhaps the land has finally answered. Still, Nayland held her decision until she was sure. One evening, she called the tribe together. The fire glowed bright and the stars shone above as everyone sat in a circle. The stranger sat quietly, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes calm. Nayland rose and spoke. "We have tested him. We have seen his patience, his strength, his humility, and his truth. For 10 years we have waited for a man who would not just fight for us, but live with us, respect us, and carry our spirit as his own. I believe this is that man." The camp fell silent. Then slowly the people nodded. The children smiled. The mothers sighed with relief, and the elders bowed their heads in agreement. The stranger did not raise his hands in victory, nor did he boast. He simply lowered his head in gratitude. From that night forward, he was no longer a stranger. He was one of them. And though they did not yet know what challenges still lay ahead, the Apache tribe finally felt a circle closing. For the first time in 10 years, they had a man among them. Not just any man, but one whose heart was brave, true, and steady. The days after the stranger was accepted into the tribe passed in quiet harmony. For the first time in many years, the camp felt whole. Children laughed louder. The women carried their loads with less heaviness, and the nights by the fire seemed warmer. The stranger, now simply called the man, worked side by side with everyone. He never demanded respect, yet respect began to grow around him naturally. But fate always has its way of testing what is true. One moonless night, danger came. The sound of hooves thundered through the valley, and shadows moved swiftly toward the camp. A group of outsiders, rough men who sought to take what was not theirs, had chosen the Apache tribe as their target. They believed the tribe was weak, a people without protectors. They were wrong. The first cry came from a boy who had been tending the fire. He shouted, and the camp awoke in panic. Women rushed to gather the children. Elders tried to keep them calm, and fear rippled through the air. For 10 years, they had defended themselves as best they could. But everyone knew this raid was different. The attackers were many, and they came with weapons. The stranger was the first to rise. His eyes were steady, his voice calm. "Do not scatter," he said. "Stay together. Protect the children first." His tone was not of command, but of assurance, and the people listened without question. He grabbed a spear, though it was not finely made, and stood at the edge of the camp. The raiders approached quickly, shouting and waving torches. The tribe had faced raids before, but this one was fierce. The women held their bows ready, yet their hands trembled. The stranger did not tremble. He stepped forward into the darkness, his body tall, his spirit unshaken. His voice rose above the chaos. "This land is not yours. Leave now." The raiders laughed, thinking one man could not stand against them. But the tribe, hearing his words, felt courage stir within their hearts. They had seen his trials, his patience, his kindness. Now they saw his strength. The first wave of raiders rushed in. The stranger moved with swiftness, blocking, striking, and forcing them back. His body carried scars, but his spirit carried fire. The children huddled together, their eyes wide, as they watched the man who had once been a stranger stand as their shield. But he was not alone. Inspired by his bravery, the women raised their bows with new strength. They fired arrows with precision, standing shoulder to shoulder. The elders, though frail, took up sticks and stones, determined to protect their home. What had begun as fear turned into unity, and at the center of it all was the stranger, guiding them with his courage. The battle was not long, but it was fierce. The raiders, surprised by the resistance, soon realized they were facing more than a camp of women and children. They were facing a people whose spirit had been awakened. One by one, the raiders fell back, retreating into the night until their torches disappeared into the desert. Silence returned to the camp, broken only by the crackle of the fire. The people stood breathing heavily, their hearts pounding, their hands still shaking from the fight. But slowly realization washed over them. They had won. The children ran to the stranger, clinging to his legs, their faces full of relief. Mothers wiped tears from their eyes, holding their little ones close. Elders bowed their heads, whispering prayers of thanks. Nalin, the wise elder, stepped forward. She placed her hand on the stranger's shoulder and said, "You have done what no one has done for us in 10 years. You did not fight for pride, but for love of the people. Tonight you showed us the spirit we thought we had lost." The man lowered his head humbly. "I only did what was right. A man is not measured by his strength alone, but by whom he chooses to protect." His words sank deep into every heart. For the first time in a decade, the tribe knew what it felt like to be led not by command, but by example. That night they gathered around the fire. The flames danced brightly, reflecting in their eyes as they listened to the elder speak. "For many seasons," Nalin said, "we prayed for balance to return. We asked for a man not of arrogance but of truth, not of greed but of spirit. Tonight the earth has shown us the answer. The man we waited for is here. He is one of us." A cheer rose softly at first, then louder. The children laughed, the women smiled, and the camp was filled with a joy it had not known for years. The stranger remained quiet, his face calm, but inside his heart carried warmth he had not felt in a long time. For years he had wandered, carrying only his scars and solitude. Now he had found a place, not because he sought power, but because he had given his heart without demand. In the days that followed, the tribe changed. Fear was replaced with confidence. The children no longer asked if true men existed. They had seen one with their own eyes. The women no longer whispered about emptiness, they now spoke of hope. The elders, who had carried the heaviest sorrow, now carried pride. The land itself seemed to breathe differently. The wind no longer whistled with loneliness. It sang with renewal. The horses, once restless, now stood calm with riders upon their backs. The river, once quiet, seemed to laugh with the voices of children playing by its banks. Yet even in this peace, the people knew challenges would come again. Life was never free of trials, but now they no longer feared them. They had seen courage, and courage had awakened courage in them all. One evening, as the sun set in crimson light, Nalin sat beside the man. She studied him quietly before speaking. "Do you know why the people follow you?" He shook his head slowly. "I am no chief." "You are more," she said softly. "A chief rules with power. You lead with spirit. That is what we waited for all these years. That is what makes a man true and brave." The man looked at the fire, his face thoughtful. For years he had wandered, unsure of his place. Now for the first time he understood. The tribe had found their protector, their guide, their missing piece. But more importantly, they had found themselves again. Their circle was whole. And so the man who had once been a stranger was no longer an outsider. He was family, bound not by blood but by spirit. The Apache tribe, after 10 long years of emptiness, had finally found the man they were searching for. Not because he was perfect, but because he was true. The sun rose gently over the desert, casting a warm glow on the Apache camp. The people moved with a new sense of peace. For the first time in 10 long years, they no longer felt incomplete. The stranger who had once walked into their land as an outsider was now one of them. The fear of emptiness was gone, replaced by the calm strength of knowing they had found a man whose heart was true. The children followed him wherever he went. They watched him with bright eyes as he taught them how to track animals, how to listen to the wind, and how to respect the earth. He did not simply show them how to survive. He showed them how to live with honor. The land gives, he told them, but it also watches how we use its gifts. Never take more than you need. Always give thanks. The boys, who once had no fathers to guide them, now felt they had someone to look up to. The girls, who once wondered if men could be trusted, now saw kindness and respect shining in his actions. He treated each child equally, with patience and gentleness, and in return they loved him with open hearts. The women, too, felt the change. The heavy burden they had carried for a decade seemed lighter. They still worked hard, but now they shared their tasks with someone who did not think himself above them. The man carried wood, fetched water, and joined them in planting seeds. He never acted as though these tasks were beneath him. Instead, he reminded them that strength was not about ruling others, but about standing with them. The elders, who had prayed for years, found their faith renewed. Around the fire at night, they often spoke of how the spirits had not forgotten them. They believed the man had been sent as an answer to their prayers, not because he was powerful, but because he was humble. The bravest man, one elder said, is not the one who fights the hardest. It is the one who carries love in his strength. Still, Nalin, the wise elder, wanted the people to remember the deeper meaning. One evening, she gathered everyone around the fire. The stars shone brightly above, and the flames cast long shadows across the circle. She rose slowly, her silver hair catching the light. For 10 years, she said, we lived without men. We thought we had lost balance. But we learned that we could survive, that women could be strong, that children could grow, and that elders could guide. We were never broken. We only waited for the circle to be complete. Now the circle is whole again. But remember this, he is not here to carry our lives for us. He is here to carry life with us. That is the way of true balance. The people nodded. They understood. The man was not a savior to replace their own strength. He was a partner in their journey. In the days that followed, the tribe began to rebuild with new hope. They repaired their shelters, trained the young in both old and new ways, and sang songs of renewal around the fire. The man's presence did not erase their struggles, but it gave them courage to face them together. One morning, the man rose early and walked to the river. A group of children followed quietly behind him. He knelt by the water, cupped his hands, and let the cool liquid run through his fingers. Then he looked at the children and smiled. This river, he said, is like our life. For years it ran quietly, carrying sadness. But rivers do not stop. They keep moving, and just like this river, our life has found new strength. Remember this, little ones, no matter how long the silence lasts, there is always a new sound waiting to return. The children carried those words in their hearts, repeating them like a song as they played by the banks. Seasons passed, and the tribe flourished. The memory of the raid became a story of unity, told around the fire with pride instead of fear. Whenever outsiders came near, they no longer saw a weak camp. They saw a people who stood tall, guided by truth, and they turned away with respect. The man became a symbol, but he never claimed the title of leader. When asked why, he only said, the tribe already has leaders. Each of you leads when you care for one another. My role is not to command, but to walk beside you. This humility only deepened the people's trust in him. They saw that he had no desire for power, only for balance. And so, without naming him chief, they began to treat him as a guide, a steady hand in times of choice, a voice of calm in moments of fear. Nalin often watched him with quiet pride. She had lived many years, seen much loss, but now she saw a future she once feared would never come. She believed her people would thrive long after she was gone because they had found more than just a man. They had found the meaning of courage and truth living among them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with colors of fire and gold, the tribe gathered for a ceremony of thanks. They sang old songs, danced in circles, and lifted their voices to the stars. The man joined them, his steps blending with theirs, his voice joining the chant. He was no longer a stranger walking alone. He was part of the story, part of the people, part of the hope that would carry them forward. At the end of the night, as the fire burned low, Nalin spoke once more. Her voice was soft but strong. For 10 years we waited. We thought we were waiting for a man. But in truth, we were waiting for the spirit of truth itself. Now it has come not to rule us, but to walk with us. Let us never forget these years, for they taught us that strength comes not only from one person, but from all of us together. And let us never forget him, the man who showed us that bravery is not in the hand, but in the heart. The people bowed their heads in respect. The man lowered his eyes, humbled, but his heart was full. That night the desert was quiet, but it was no longer empty. The stars seemed brighter, the wind softer, the earth calmer. The Apache tribe, once weighed down by sorrow, now carried hope as their shield. And so the story of 10 years without a man came to an end, not with despair, but with renewal. They had searched for a true and brave man, and they had found him. But more importantly, they had found themselves again, whole and unbroken, ready to face whatever the future would bring.